So we'll go ahead and get right into it. Okay, so a few years ago, I had really just had enough. I was pretty much the C there. It was exhausting for me. I would go into school on the weekends and just spend hours grading these essays because I didn't want to do it during my planning periods because the planning period was what, 45 to 60 minutes. And how many essays could I even get through in that time? It's like, why would I start something that I can't finish? So I was feeling really, really frustrated with essay grading in general. And a few years ago, I just had it. I was like, I have to start over. I have to try something different. This is not working for me. And I decided to just start from square one. So I want to show you, this is what a traditional essay rubric looks like, right? We've all seen something similar to this. Let's think about this. If you're grading an essay with this rubric, how many decisions do you have to make for that one essay? Like, let's just take a minute and count. Go through all of these different columns, all the different rows, all of the different bullet points. How many decisions do you have to make in order to grade this essay? The mental power it takes just to look at this and look at an essay and make all of those decisions. It feels insurmountable sometimes. 144, I could see that. 15 decisions in the first row alone. Exactly. There is so much decision making to do. And we are already making a lot of decisions as teachers every day. I know there's been this number circulating the internet that teachers make like 1,500 decisions each day. When I was going into the research for that, though, I could not find a single credible source that said it was 1,500 decisions a day. Instead, when I went down the rabbit hole, what I saw was that teachers are actually making multiple thousands of decisions each day. Just teaching, that's not even going into the grading and everything yet. It is thousands of decisions already. And our brains are getting fried. There's so much to do and so many things that are important and are taking our time and are taking our brain power. So, how do we spend less time and brain power grading without sacrificing student feedback and growth? Because that's our goal, right? We want to make sure that we're actually still helping our students. We can't say, oh, well, this is overwhelming, so I guess you're just going to get a letter grade and no feedback from me. We want to make sure we're doing right by our students, but how do we do that without making 50, 100, 150 decisions on every single essay we're grading? I've found that for me, the best solution is the yes or no checklist, because this really narrows the number of decisions that I have to make while still giving my students valuable feedback. So instead of a rubric with a ton of decisions, a ton of numbers, rows, columns, I have a simple checklist. And this is what works really well for me. Now, step one is breaking the essay down. So what I have my students do is I have them turn in their thesis statement first. That's the foundation of the entire essay. And so I want to make sure they have that right before they move on to the rest of the essay. So they turn in that one sentence, the thesis statement, and then I'm able to make a yes or no checklist for that thesis statement before they move on to the next thing. And as they turn in each piece of their essay, I can grade it with my simple yes no checklist, and they have that feedback before they move forward. And it's very valuable to them because they don't get to the end of their essay and find out they have to start back from scratch. But for me, it's wonderful because my grading time is cut down to such a short and simple amount that my brain can handle, as exhausted as it is. So these are the questions that I answer when I'm making my yes or no checklists. And these are the questions that you can answer when you're making the yes no checklist for your students too. So first, I think, what do my students usually forget when they're writing this part of the essay? So for example, my seventh graders a lot of time forget to explain their evidence. They're usually pretty good about putting evidence in there, but they forget that they have to actually explain why it's important, how it supports their claim. So that is something that I would want to put specifically on my little yes or no checklist. Include one sentence about why this evidence matters, something like that. Sometimes they forget to give an overview of the topic in the intro. So I can make that one very specific line on my introduction rubric. The next question that we want to ask when we're making this yes or no checklist is, what is the purpose of this section of the essay? So if it's a topic sentence, then they need to state the topic of that paragraph. Or I might be even more specific than that. And I might say, this sentence includes a claim. I break it down so simply for them so that they know what to do, and I don't have to have all this subjective thinking in my mind when I'm grading it. The next question that I ask when I'm making my yes/no checklist is, what comments am I constantly making on my students' papers? And this is another one, if you want to drop this in the Q&A, what are those comments that you are constantly writing on students' papers? I know I used to write all the time, remember to avoid the word you in your essays, or I would start doing you with a little X through it, because that's something that I just had to tell the kids constantly. Proofread, yes. There are these things we tell them all the time. And I decided I don't want to waste all this time writing this out all the time. Embed your quotes. Yes. More development. Yes. Explanation piece. Yes, Melissa, exactly. They just forget to explain the evidence sometimes. So instead of writing these comments out every time, I've decided that it's a lot easier for me to make that a specific point on the yes or no checklist. Like if they're not embedding quotes, I put that on my rubric. The quote is introduced with, and I use a TRAP acronym for that. So I would say a that clause, a reporting verb, according to, dot, 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 or part of the sentence. So I will put that right there in my checklist, because if they don't do it, I don't have to write, like, embed your quote. I can just say no, and they read right there what they forgot to do, and they've got that feedback and they know to do it. One quote is, yes, that's another great thing. You can put all the things you want them to avoid on your yes/no checklist. Oh, capitalize the letter I. Why is that so hard? Is it because of phones? Is that why? Or did we all do that when we were younger too, and we weren't a part of it because we were future teachers? Good points. And then the last question that I consider when I am making my yes or no checklist is, what questions do students and parents often have about their essay grades? Now, it's true that a lot of times they're just going to ask, like, why did I miss 2 points on this assignment? I was getting a lot of questions like that before, and even sometimes at the beginning of the school year, I still will. But what I love is when we get close to that first parent-teacher conference, or when we have that first parent-teacher conference, and the parents come in and they'll say, I notice that my son, he's missing, a couple points on thesis statement assignments, topic sentence assignments. What can I do to encourage him? What can I do to help him? And I show them right there on our learning management system where I've checked off yes, no, no, yes, 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 no. And they love it so much because they don't have to just ask their kid, like, what do you think you did wrong? Or read like a complicated rubric where it's kind of subjective, or hope that their kid brings something home. They're able to look, oh, you did this, you did this. Oh, this is what you forgot. Make sure you do this next time. So whenever I show them that, they almost just like sigh with relief, like, oh, thank you. And they're so happy that they actually have that feedback there. Oh, this is a great question. Is the initial checklist a formative assessment, and can it be improved upon? So, yes, what I like to do is I give them that checklist, and that's kind of like grading the rough draft as it's being written. So after they finish their whole essay, they have feedback on every piece of that essay already. And then they have like an editing checklist where they have to fix a certain number of things before they turn in a final draft. Other times, I will, like today, actually. Yesterday, we were working on our describe your classmate essays, and they were working on their thesis statements. And some of them got it and did an amazing job. But there was a good number where there were like just cracks in the thesis statement. They didn't fail it or anything, but there were cracks that I knew would cause them problems in their essays later on. So I assigned like 5 thesis statement experts in each section of my class. And then we had a thesis statement take 2 assignment where everyone got to turn it in again. And the majority of the class is getting 100% on today's assignment, whereas yesterday it was more like 70 and 80%. So yes, they absolutely can improve upon that and get a better grade later. But I do continue to use checklists as I'm grading just to save me that time. Wonderful question. So I have a planning period like right before lunch where I can grade my morning classes. And then if I stay after school, because I'm contracted to stay after school for a few minutes, so I'm able to grade the rest of them right there after school until my contract time ends. And so they have that feedback before they write the next piece the next day, usually. Oh, and yes, how does this checklist work with mastery standards-based grading? Um, I feel like it works really well with that. We've been working a lot on that too. I like it because I am putting like the exact skills and things that I want them to have in that checklist. And because we use these same checklists for like the next essay and the next essay, and I even build on them, they can see, okay, well, supporting my claims, that was something that I struggled with at the beginning of the year. That's what I need to work on. And they continue to move toward mastery of that skill. They're definitely broken down more specifically than the standards as they're written. So they're clear for us, but I feel as though they move toward mastery of the standards really well with the checklist. Great question. So after I ask myself these 4 questions, what do my students usually forget? What is the point of this section? What comments am I constantly making on my students' papers? And what questions will students and parents have about their grades? I come up with usually a fairly short checklist. I try to stay around 4 to 6 items on my checklist, and it depends what part of the essay it is, but that's what I can usually do in a manageable amount of time. So this one here is for a topic sentence. The topic sentence begins with the transition phrase. We like to move on to more sophisticated transition phases later, but at the beginning of the year, they can start with the first of all or in the first place. I'm okay with that. And then next, the topic sentence includes one convincing reason to agree, and this is specific to the prompt that they are working on, that your gift is the absolute worst. So this rubric is related to the essay that they write about the worst gift you could possibly give someone for $5 or less. So I am super specific that they are including one reason to agree that their gift is the absolute worst. And I make it as specific as I can. Then the topic sentence avoids giving further explanation or evidence to support its claim. This is something that I was always having to write as a comment because my students, they were starting their paragraph and they were just getting excited and they were starting to throw in all their examples right away before they'd even made their claim. So I didn't want to keep writing this comment anymore. I just made that an item on my checklist. It avoids giving further explanation or evidence to support its claim. That's coming later in the paragraph. And then I've made mechanics one item on the checklist because I have found that the kids who want to do well, if I circle no here on mechanics, they will come to me and they will ask, was it my comma? Was it the capitalization here? Was it misspelling? If they can't figure it out, they will ask me. And the kids that don't want to fix this, we're not looking at all of my marks anyway. So this is something where, again, we address it again. And I ask them, what is something you lost points for on your rubric? And if it was mechanics, then that's what they have to fix when they do their editing checklist before they turn in their final draft. So remember this rubric we looked at. We said how many decisions were here. We got a few different answers, and 15 in the first one alone, 50, 150, so many decisions. How many decisions are we making here with a yes or no checklist? I see 4. So an unbelievable difference in how many questions we are putting into our brains, how many decisions we have to make on top of the thousands of decisions that we're making every day already. So this is why I make yes/no checklists and why they work for me. If you use those 4 questions, you can make yes/no checklists that work well for your students too. So let's try this out. Here is a topic sentence related to that essay I was just telling you about. First of all, deodorant implies that a person stinks because the label on the deodorant says it's odor eliminating. So I'm going to look at my yes or no checklist here, and then I'll circle no or yes. So the topic sentence begins with the transition phrase, yes, it does. I'll circle yes. Topic sentence includes one convincing reason to agree that the gift is the absolute worst. Well, it implies it stinks because of the label on the deodorant saying it's odor eliminating. Yeah, that's a reason. Yes. The topic sentence avoids giving further explanation or evidence to support its claim. I don't know. I feel like the label on the deodorant is a little bit too much evidence and explanation at this point. They could have stopped after it implying that a person stinks. I'd say no. And the topic sentence is written with correct mechanics. No, it's not. We've got a comma before because. We've got no hyphen with odor eliminating. We have it's no apostrophe. I'm going to circle no. And so that takes me usually 30 seconds or less. All right, more excellent questions coming in. How many weeks or how much time do you allow in class for the students to work on each section? Okay, so what I usually do for my first essay of the year, we usually take 15 school days. And I break that down. So we'll work on the thesis statement one day, topic sentence one the next day, topic sentence number two the next day. We break it down. And then for our second essay, it's down to 10 school days. So it's broken up into pieces, but we can do them in 2 weeks. So we're able to get through quite a few essays throughout the year. I don't check sentence by sentence. For the thesis statement and topic sentences, I do. But then they turn in all their reasoning together and they turn in all their evidence and explanation together. So it's not sentence by sentence through the whole essay because yeah, that would get a little bit exhausting. But for that framework, the foundation, that is really important for me to check before they move on. I don't handwrite feedback. With the number of students I have some years, I do the checklist, but they do all of their writing in class with me. We have about 15 to 20 minutes at the end of class that they get to write these assignments. So I circle around and I talk to them about their assignments. A lot of them will show it to me. They'll raise their hand. I'll take a look at it. So I am giving them a lot of verbal feedback in class about their writing. That way, when I circle the yeses or nos on the checklist, they know what I'm talking about. And then they can bring that back to me the next day if they have questions, and I continue to talk to them. So it's not just that they're seeing circles on a page, they get to talk to me too, but the feedback that's actually written is pretty simple. These are usually, let's see, how long do you want the essays to be? These are usually, 5-paragraph essays. They end up being, if the kids do everything I ask them to, they end up being around 500 words. Sometimes a little shorter, sometimes a little longer, but I like them to be around that length. I don't give them a word count because we're really focusing more on the structure of the essay and getting the content in, making sure it's organized and explained. So I don't give them word counts, but if they do everything the way I've asked them to, usually around 500 words. Oh, Jeanette, oh, I love this. I do have my students do 5-paragraph essays on books. I have these literary analysis essays they do. We just finished their roller coaster essay, maybe about a week ago. I don't know, time has been weird lately. But yes, they will have to make a claim about their book. And so it might be that they design a sandwich that would represent one of the characters, or they design a theme park ride that would represent the book. And that's their claim. They're like pitching it to the board of directors. And then they have their 3 main points about how it represents their character or book. And then each of the body paragraphs is going into more detail about that. So yeah, my kids just finished writing about these roller coasters that represented their different books for Book World. And then they actually built the essays at the end too, but they had to use text evidence for every element of the ride. So like some people would talk about the roller coaster's ups and downs. And so they would have text evidence that showed the character being happy, the character being sad. They would have water elements in the ride, and they would have text evidence about like the character like swimming through the tunnels and the mystery. It was really cool. And they built them afterwards, and they invited, well, we invited the younger class to come in and look at the roller coasters and get book recommendations for my students. It was so much fun. So yes, I think book-related essays are a huge win. So good. Do you put a point value to this? Oh, I do, because I'm required to put grades in the grade book for everything. So what I do is when I look at this yes/no rubric, I assign 1 point to the no's and 2 points to the yeses. So this here that we see on this screen, that would be 8 points total. If they turned in anything, if they wrote something, if they tried, the very least they could do is a 50%. But if they're reading this checklist at all and doing anything, their grade goes up significantly from there. So, I don't have people getting 50%. And then Claire, I use it with 7th grade. 6th through 8th is where I would probably recommend it. But I'm teaching 7th grade right now. So the editing checklist that they do afterward, I have a few different ones. It depends what I want them to focus on. So if I want my students to focus on sentence structure, then maybe I'll just have a sentence structure editing checklist. But what I really prefer to do is just have the kids have a set number of edits that I want them to make. And so I have them look through all of the rubrics from the essay so far. And then I say, I want you to make 10 edits or 20 edits, whatever it is, to your essay based on the feedback I've given you on your checklists. And so they go through their thesis statements, topic sentences, reasoning, evidence, and they look at everything I've told them, and they go back to their essay and they make those changes and they circle them. And then I look at those changes and then check yes, no, yes, no. Well, yes, 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 like they've made the right number of changes. Because I found it's a good way for me to differentiate the editing process, because students who did really well on all of the different pieces of their essay still have to push themselves to improve their writing. So even if it's only that they were missing points for mechanics, well, then they really need to look at those mechanics. Maybe they need to do a little better with sentence structure. Maybe I need to give them one of those other checklists to push them more. But then the students who really struggled, they're going to see like, oh, okay, I forgot my transition phrases. Oh, I need to include another reason here. They have really specific things that they can go through. And so I just check to make sure that they're putting in the work to edit before they turn in their final draft. So let's see, how many rounds of checklists do you do with each section? So with each section of the essay, so for thesis statement, they get one checklist, and then if we have to redo it, they'll get it again. For topic sentences, at the beginning of the year, they do topic sentence 1, then topic sentence 2, topic sentence 3. By the end of the year, they're doing all the topic sentences on the same day, and I tell them I'll grade one of them. And then I do a checklist for all their reasoning. I do a checklist for their evidence and explanation, a checklist for their hook, their bridge, and their conclusion. So those are all the checklists that I do for their essay, and then they do the editing checklist at the end. If that didn't answer your question, I'm sorry. Let's try this one right here. It's another yes, no checklist. This one's for a thesis statement. The phoenix is more likely to survive in present day Earth than any other mythical creature because of its adaptability and resilience. So what I'd like you to do, take a look here at the yes or no checklist and give it a score in the Q&A. What would you score this thesis statement? We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 decisions to make on this checklist. We've got the thesis statement states which mythical creature would have the best chance at survival. The thesis statement includes at least 1 convincing reason that supports the claim, 2 convincing reasons, 3 convincing reasons, and then we've got mechanics. So what score would you give this kid? So then again, no is 1 point, yes is 2 points. The highest they can get on this is a 10 out of 10. So they say which mythical creature would have the best chance at survival. They do include at least 1 convincing reason, it's adaptability, 2 convincing reasons, it's resilience. Not a 3rd reason, they're missing that. And then the mechanics, Phoenix is more likely to survive in present day Earth than any other mythical creature because of, that's fine. So I would say yes, 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 no, yes, and they would get a 9 out of 10. I see a lot of you did 9 out of 10 as well. And then that's done. So in 30 seconds, my students have really specific and detailed feedback to use as they continue writing. And that has just been such a time saver for me. But also, it's been really helpful for them. And the parents love it too. It's been a really good thing. So, what would your life look like if every part of teaching essays were that simple?